Good morning, everyone.
In unison, good morning, Your Honor.
Please remain standing. Raise your right hand. Face the clerk.
I do.
Please be seated. State and spell your name for the record.
My name is Jean Seamount. Jean, Jean. Lorraine, Lorraine. Seamount, Seamount.
Thank you.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Good morning, Dr. Seamount. What is your professional background?
Should I state my degrees?
Sure.
I obtained my Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry from UCLA. I obtained my Doctorate of Dental Surgery from UC San Francisco. And I obtained my Master's of Science in Dentistry from the University of the Pacific.
All right, and are you an orthodontist?
Yes, I am.
How long have you been an orthodontist?
About 17 years.
All right, where is your office located?
511 5th Street, Solvang.
In Solvang. All right, Your Honor, there's an exhibit that was previously received in evidence. May I put it up on the board? It's 5030.
You may.
Give that a second to focus and give you a chance to look at it. Do you see the star there?
Yes.
Does that appear to be where your office is located in Solvang?
Yes.
And you said 5th Street. How close is that to the main drag in Solvang?
It's almost to the corner.
And I disrespectfully said, the main drag, but what is that street called?
Mission.
Is it also a highway?
Yes, Highway 246.
Is that where? When you're going from 154 to 101, you have to slow down to 25 and enjoy the shops and the scenery there?
As you enter Solvang on 246, you do have to slow down.
All right, excuse me 1 second. We're all going to trip over something here. Okay, all right, Your Honor, I'd like to approach the witness with a series of exhibits.
You may.
Go ahead, I've seen them.
I'm going to show you 5020 through 5029, which is a series of photographs, and just ask you to take a look at those photographs, and then I'll ask you a question after you have a chance to inspect them. All right, having looked at those photographs, do they appear to be photographs of your dental offices?
Yes, they are.
And do they appear to be a fair and accurate depiction of the offices?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, I would move into evidence. Most of them have come in, but I would move into evidence the ones that did not, which would be 5023, 5028 and 5029.
Any objection?
No objection.
They're admitted.
And may I publish them on the overhead, please?
You may.
5020 is now being placed on the board. All right, and what does that represent?
That's the sign in front of my building.
All right, 5021, what is that?
That is the exterior of my building. The front entrance.
Front entrance. 5022, go ahead and tell us what that is. I'm sorry.
That's the handicapped parking in the front area of the exterior of my building, facing Mission.
And you see some cars parked on the street, like that little red car there?
Yes.
About how far from Mission Street, 246, is that red car?
Not very far. You can see the truck that's going to be crossing the intersection, so, you know, as far as how many feet, you know, I don't know, but it's pretty close.
All right, and is this a populated area of California or are there people that live and work in this general area?
Yes, there's a residence right next door to my building. That's a hotel that you can see right over there.
I'm going to point here to the right side of 5022. That's a hotel, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you mentioned earlier a truck. I now have a pointer, for the record. So you mentioned a truck. It looks like a white pickup truck.
Yes.
Going from left to right on the exhibit. Is that truck on Mission or 246?
It's on Mission, which is 246.
All right, now I'm going to put up 5023. Do you recognize that?
Yes. This is the counter in my waiting room, my reception area.
So when you go in the front door, you have a reception area. Looks like there might be a chair there or a couch.
Yes.
And then there's, looks like a barrier of some sort with a swinging door. Is that right?
Yes.
And when patients are brought back into the examining room, which way do they go?
Not through there. There's a large entry area, or a large hall that goes into the treatment rooms.
Is that to the right or the left here?
It's.
Or behind us, I suppose.
It's in front of this.
Okay, so as far as this is concerned, is this area the place where your staff would work?
Yes.
And is there a telephone back there?
Yes.
I'm going to put up 5024. And this appears to be a different view of the same area, is that correct?
Yes.
So if I understand you, I apologize for getting that backwards. This would be the front door coming in. Is that correct?
No, that's a window.
That's a window. Okay, what is this? I give up.
The front French doors.
Okay, so that's the way you would come into the office?
Yes.
Alright, and then where do you go to the examining rooms?
To my left, right here.
So in the forefront or in the back?
In the back.
Alright, so near where you enter, you also go. You also go back to the examining rooms. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Alright, I'm going to show you 5025, and ask you if that's one of your examining rooms.
This is my main treatment room where I see 3 patients at a time.
Alright, now, I take it the chairs are for the patients, right?
Yes.
I see here what appear to be some doors. Is that correct?
Yes.
And actually, there's a clock right above that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Does that clock work?
Yes.
Alright, did it work in February and March of 2003?
Probably.
Alright, now, where do these doors go to?
To my private office and consultation room.
Alright, to the left there appear to be some doors. Is that correct?
Yes.
And where do those doors go to?
To the exterior deck in the back.
Now, is there another set of doors to the left of this that are excluded from the picture?
Yes.
So I'm going to put up 5026 and ask you, is this the set of doors that we saw in the other picture, that being the doors on the right here?
Yes.
And then here's another set of doors in this picture by the rocking chair on the left, right?
Yes.
And that goes out to the back patio. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are those doors, if there was an emergency of some sort, can people go through those doors to get outside?
Absolutely. You can never lock them from the inside.
Alright, I'm going to put up 5027 and ask you what this represents.
That is one of our private treatment rooms.
And is there a name for this room?
Pardon?
Is there a name for the room?
It's called the Western Room.
Okay, and that's because there's some Western pictures on the wall, that sort of thing?
A Western theme.
And what was the name of the other room, by the way, if there was one?
The Windmill Room.
Okay, so this is a separate room, and then I see some doors here. Where do those doors go?
To the outer deck.
Are those doors unlocked so if there's an emergency somebody could go right out?
Yes.
Now I'm going to put up 5028. And what does 5028 depict?
This is the exterior, the back side of my office, showing the 4 sets of French doors.
Alright, now, I see one set here. Which room does that go to?
The Western Room.
And then it looks like there are 2 sets there in the middle, by the chimney. What do they go to?
Okay, the door right next to the Western Room goes to the Sunrise Room.
Okay, that's the room we didn't see?
That's correct.
Alright.
And then there's 2 sets of French doors on either side of the fireplace that go into the Windmill Room.
Alright, so what did you say that was called?
The Sunrise Room.
It almost makes you want to go have your teeth worked on.
That's the point.
Alright, I said, almost, though, by the way. Let me clarify that. Alright, now, if you come out the back here, if somebody wanted to, get away, and go to other people, to civilization to get help or whatever, could they leave by way of this back door?
Yes. There really aren't any barriers.
Okay, I'm going to show you 5029, and ask you if you recognize 50. I think you told us you do. But what is 5029?
This is the side of my building next to the western room.
So on the left here where we only see the corner of the building, if we followed that a few feet to the left, you would have the first of those French doors, correct?
Yes.
And what the photographer's point of view seems to be from the patio itself, is that correct, or the deck?
Yes.
And then there's a ramp here, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, there's a walkway, it appears, also in the picture, is that correct?
Yes.
Does this ramp lead to that walkway?
Yes.
And right out in front, there seems to be a van parked there. Is that 5th Street?
Yes.
And then we saw in the original picture that a number of yards down to the right from this picture would be Mission, also known as 246, correct?
Yes.
Alright, do you know? Your Honor, we can have the lights, if that's alright. I'll come back to it in a minute, but not right now. Do you know Mr. Jackson?
I've never talked to him. I know of him.
But you never met him at any time?
I've never been introduced.
Alright, have you had occasion to be contacted by anybody from Mr. Jackson's ranch?
I think I should have my attorney address the judge.
Your Honor, Max Sanborn. Could I approach?
Do you have an objection, counsel?
Actually, Your Honor, we're looking for a point of clarification. I understand that Dr. Seamount's testimony is going to be in connection with an examination and treatment of the alleged victim's older brother, and to the extent his mom was involved with it, the mother as well. I understand that Evidence Code Section 998 says that there is no physician-patient privilege in a criminal proceeding. And we're looking for clarification with the court, because I reviewed cases and I can't find any cases where a witness is testifying about a witness. Only the defendant is the holder. So could I have a clarification on that?
I'll order her to testify.
Thank you.
Go ahead, counsel.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Okay, I forgot what I asked you. Did somebody contact you from the ranch? Have you ever been contacted by anybody from the ranch?
Once I was contacted by, I think it was Joe Marcus, regarding 2 high-profile patients that needed their braces removed.
Alright, and did you eventually treat those patients?
I removed their braces for them.
Alright, and do you recall the names of those patients?
Gavin and Star.
Last name Arvizo?
Yes.
Alright, and was their mother present?
Yes.
And what was her name?
I don't remember.
Okay, but Mrs. Arvizo?
Yes.
Alright, now, do you recall when the appointment was scheduled for?
It was on a Monday evening, and since they said it was 2 high-profile patients, I decided to place them at the end of the day.
When do you usually close your office?
That night, I think it was 6 o'clock.
Okay, do you usually close? Do you have a usual closing time of some sort?
For the Solvang office, it's either 5 p.m., 6 p.m. or 7 p.m., depending.
Alright, and on that particular night, when did you meet with these particular patients?
I think it was around 6 o'clock.
Now, you indicated something about taking off the braces. What was the nature of the request? First of all, starting with Mr. Marcus, did he tell you what they needed to have done?
Yes, I'm pretty sure that they wanted their braces removed. I think so.
And when you eventually met with the mother and the 2 boys, did you conclude that that's what they were requesting?
The mother requested removal of the braces.
Alright, now, first of all, before we get to what happened there, did you see anybody arrive with the Arvizos?
I didn't.
Okay, where did you see the Arvizo children? Did you see them in different rooms or the same room?
One patient was in the western room. The other was in the sunrise room.
Alright, so these rooms are rooms that have doors, you can exit to the back patio, is that right?
That's correct.
Now, can you explain to us the best you recall the attitude and demeanor of the mother that you observed that night?
She was angry at another orthodontist who had placed the braces, and she wanted the braces removed so she could send the braces back in the mail to the orthodontist. She claimed that once the orthodontist found out who she was, he wanted more money, and so she was very angry and she just wanted them removed. And she wanted to personally send them back by mail to him.
Now, was that consistent with your medical advice?
No, I spent quite some time explaining to her about the need for treatment, and that I could take over or any orthodontist could take over the braces that were placed, and I recommended not removing the braces and continuing on with treatment.
How did that advice? How was that received by Mrs. Arvizo?
I think that she discussed it with her sons. I can't completely remember. And then we also discussed other treatment options, such as braces behind the teeth.
Now, did she specifically ask about options that would be more expensive than the ones that she had?
I don't remember.
Okay, you say, braces behind the teeth. Is that sort of an invisible braces procedure?
Yes.
Alright, and did she ask you for a quote to install those kinds of braces?
She seemed interested. I don't remember if she asked for a quote or not.
Alright, now, why was it that you recommended that she not remove the braces that were there?
Because they need braces and it's their best interest to continue on with treatment.
Did you inspect the braces that were in place?
Yes.
Did they appear to be installed properly?
Yes.
Did they appear to be doing the job they were designed to do?
Yes.
And taking them off at that time, did that appear to you to be counterproductive?
Yes.
Alright, now, did you have an opportunity to review your medical records and determine the date that this visit occurred?
No, it appeared that they had been recently placed, and that there hadn't been much tooth movement. She refused to fill out the paperwork that we normally have patients fill out.
Okay, I guess what I was asking, and it's my fault. Did you review your paperwork to determine what day this family came in to see you?
Oh, yes, I did.
And what day was that?
That was February 24th.
2003?
Yes.
How long were the three Arvizos in your office that night?
Probably a couple of hours. I'm not sure.
And during that period of time, did you ever see anybody with them?
No.
So if Mr. Marcus was there at all, you never saw him, he never came back in the back.
That's correct.
Were there any other bodyguards or anybody else like that?
I didn't see anybody.
Was there a positive PR film crew that was following this group around taking pictures of you doing this orthodontic work?
No.
When they left, how did they leave? In other words,
They just left.
alright, said goodbye to you and they walked out on their own, is that right?
Yes.
Nobody came and took them out?
I didn't see anybody.
Alright, now, besides the telephone that's located in the reception area, are there other telephones located in your suite of offices?
Yes.
If a patient or client wants to use the telephone, makes a request, do you allow them to do so?
Absolutely.
Does that happen on a fairly regular basis?
Yes.
Did anybody in this family during that 2-hour period ask to use the telephone?
No.
Did they give any indication that they were being held against their will?
Not at all.
Did anybody in this group make any request for help or assistance?
No.
Did anyone attempt to go out the back door and leave that way?
No.
Now, during the time that you had Star in one room and Gavin in the other room, what was Mrs. Arvizo doing?
I don't know.
Was she up and walking around or was she seated in one particular place?
I don't know where she was.
You talked to her from time to time during
Yes.
the visit, right? And was she in there with one or the other of the boys from time to time when you were working on them?
I don't really remember. She was free to go where she wanted to when she wanted to. I wasn't really focusing on her.
Alright, now, did you observe the behavior of the two boys?
Yes.
And can you describe the behavior of Gavin?
He's the older boy, right?
Yes.
He was undisciplined, and he started to go through my drawers with my disposables.
Alright, does that pose a health hazard?
Yes, I'd have to throw everything away.
Okay, did you try to stop him from doing that?
Yes. And I told Tiffany, please don't leave the boys alone.
Alright, did he seem to be intimidated or in fear at any time?
Not at all.
Did Mrs. Arvizo appear to be intimidated or in fear?
Not at all.
What about Star, the younger of the two? Do you recall what he was doing?
His behavior, I think, was better.
Did he appear to be intimidated at all?
No.
Okay, now, With regard to the two boys, are you clear on which one is which right now as you sit there?
The boy that I thought was older was in the Western room and exhibited the worst behavior.
Okay. Between the two, was one heavier than the other one? Do you recall?
The boy in the Western room appeared to be bigger, heavier, to me.
Alright, and was he the one that had the worst behavior?
Yes.
Alright, I have no further questions.
Mr. Zonen?
Thank you, Your Honor. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning.
Tell me what made those two patients VIP patients.
At the time I didn't know.
What could? Do you have a collection of VIP patients that you schedule for certain times during the week?
Why is that important?
Excuse me, ma'am. Answer the question.
Answer the question?
Let me do this, Your Honor. Let me object.
Just a moment, counsel.
I'm sorry.
Ask your question.
Is there an answer? I don't know if there was an answer.
No, you can answer the question.
Okay, if there are scheduling problems with a patient, I will make special arrangements, and it doesn't matter how important they are as far as the world's concerned. If somebody has a special need, I have come in on off hours for them.
My question dealt with why these two children were designated VIP. What exactly was it that made these two children VIP patients?
I did not determine that.
Was that your understanding, that somebody in your office determined them to be VIP patients?
No, we were told that they were high-profile patients from Joe Marcus.
Okay. Now, high-profile patient means what to you?
Someone recognizable.
Is Joe Marcus somebody you knew prior to that day?
No.
But your understanding is Joe Marcus contacted your office and said both of these kids are high profile?
Yes.
That they would be recognizable?
He didn't say that. He said, high profile.
And that he did not want them recognized. Is that the case?
He did not say that.
Did he specifically ask that this be at a time when the clinic was otherwise closed to other patients?
No, he did not.
Was that a decision that was made by you?
Yes.
Alright. Did you feel that that was necessary in this particular case?
After I met them, no, I never would have recognized them.
And were you aware that Joe Marcus was there the entire time that the patients were there?
No.
Did you learn that afterward?
I think I just recently heard something to that effect. I had no idea he was there.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Counsel?
Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Call your next witness.
We call Tiffany Haynes.
Come forward, please. When you get to the witness stand, please remain standing. Face the clerk and raise your right hand.
Yes.
Please be seated. State and spell your name for the record.
My name is Tiffany Haynes. Tiffany Haynes.
Thank you.
Miss Haynes, how are you employed?
I'm an orthodontic assistant.
For whom are you working?
Dr. Jean Seamount.
Alright, Your Honor, Mr. Sanborn, the lawyer for Dr. Seamount, asked that we clarify that the same ruling would apply to the assistant.
The same ruling does apply. I'll order her to testify.
Thank you.
I'll make it clear that the court has waived the considerations of privacy of the patients in this situation and has ruled that the need for the testimony outweighs those considerations, and that's why I've ordered the doctor and any of the staff to testify.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Okay, Miss Haynes, how long have you worked for Dr. Seamount?
4.5 years.
Did you recently take a leave?
Yes. I'm on maternity leave.
You're on maternity leave?
Yes.
Were you working for her in the office on February 27, 2003?
Yes, I was.
And have you had a chance to go back and look at some of the records to refresh your recollection as to that date?
Yes, I have.
Alright, now, on that particular day, I think the bailiff is going to tell you.
She's fine.
Everybody has this problem. You have to get real close to the microphone. On that particular day, did you receive a telephone call from anybody requesting an appointment for someone?
Yes, we did.
And who made the call, to your knowledge?
A staff member from Neverland Ranch.
Alright, now, Mr. Jackson is seated right there. Have you ever met Mr. Jackson before?
No, I haven't.
Alright, what happened as a result of the telephone call coming from a ranch employee, or staff person at Neverland?
We made them an appointment and they came in.
Alright, do you, as the office manager, do you know who was billed for the services for this family?
I'm positive it was Neverland Ranch's bill.
And did they eventually pay the bill?
Yes.
Alright, now, do you recall the name of the people who came in?
Yes, I do.
And what was their names?
I remember, well, one was Star.
Alright.
And I can't remember the other one. I'd have to look at his paperwork.
Alright, were there 2 boys?
Yes, they were 2 boys.
And were they brothers?
Yes, I believe they were.
So Star and his brother.
Yes.
Alright, and did anybody accompany them?
Yes. Their mother accompanied them.
Alright, did you see any employees of the ranch or any drivers or anybody that might have come with them?
Yes.
And who did you see?
It was a man from the ranch who made the appointment brought them.
Did you see him inside the examining rooms at any time?
No.
Where was he during the time of the examinations and treatment?
I believe he was waiting in the lobby.
Okay, did you ever see him anywhere other than the lobby?
No.
Now, do you recall roughly what time the family got there that night?
6:45.
Okay, that's roughly, alright, and at that time, when was the Solvang office open until?
We were seeing patients until 7 o'clock.
Was it unusual to see patients who remained after the official closing time?
We do for certain patients that request to be seen after patient hours.
Alright, so it sounds like these people got there 15 minutes before closing and were there beyond?
Correct.
How long were they there?
About 2 hours.
Now, did you assist Dr. Seamount during the course of her seeing these patients?
Yes, I did.
Was there anybody else there from your office?
No, there wasn't.
Just you and Dr. Seamount, is that correct?
Yes.
During the time that you were assisting Dr. Seamount, did you have an opportunity to observe the behavior of the 2 boys?
Yes, I did.
And can you describe their behavior?
Your Honor, all object as irrelevant.
Overruled. You may answer.
Well, the younger boy stayed in one room with his mother. And he seemed to be fairly quiet, you know. Nobody likes to go to the dentist. The older boy I ended up assisting was very, could I say kind of rude.
Okay, when you say, kind of rude, I know it's not nice to talk about people when they're not there, but this is a court, we have to ask you. Why do you say that?
Just the way that he acted with us. He just thought that pretty much he was better than us.
Okay.
Judge, I'm going to object to the answer as a conclusion and speculative.
Sustained.
Move to strike.
Stricken.
Can you explain the actual behavior? Give us an idea of what occurred that caused you to feel that the older boy was rude.
Well, we tried to convince them to stay in treatment, you know, for the better of their teeth, and he just was very abrupt and said, "No, this is what I want done. This is what's going to be done." And so we ended up doing whatever he wanted.
Now, was there any problem with either of these boys getting into things in the office?
No.
Was there any time when either one of them, to your knowledge, was going through drawers or trying to get into things?
Objection. Leading.
Sustained.
Okay, now, tell me about what you were explaining to the patients about their braces. Did you actually talk to them in addition to Dr. Seamount?
Yes.
And what did you talk to them about?
Well, you know, trying to keep their braces on, because he wasn't done with his treatment at all. And so if he were to take them off, then most likely, when he became an adult, he might have to have braces again, or eventually, you know, get broken teeth and crowns and dentures and whatnot. Trying to save money in the long run.
Now, Did he tell you where he was from?
Yes, he did.
Where did he say?
He was from LA.
And how did he tell you that?
I'm going to object as irrelevant and hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
Well, I was trying to make small talk and asked him where he was from. And I asked if he was from around the valley and he said, "No, I'm from LA."
Alright, now, did you ask either one of the boys any other questions, any other personal questions?
No, not after the answer that I got.
Alright, and did you try to keep it on a professional level?
Yes.
Alright, did either of the boys appear to be afraid of anything? Was there anything that,
No.
other than having a big drill or something?
No.
But they didn't appear to be afraid of anybody around, they didn't indicate.
No.
Did you talk to the mother?
I didn't personally talk to the mother.
Did you see her around?
Yes.
Did you see her interact with Dr. Seamount?
Yes.
And what was her attitude?
Well, she was just there to see what was going to be done to her children pretty much. She didn't have any reaction to anything really.
Did she make any requests in your presence with regard to their treatment?
No.
Okay. Did you ever put together a proposal to replace the braces that were removed?
Yes.
Did you do that at the mother's request?
Yes.
Do you recall roughly how expensive that procedure would have been?
I'm going to object as beyond the scope of this witness's expertise and relevance.
Foundation. Sustained.
Okay.
Relevance. Sustained.
Okay. During the time that you were talking with these boys and the mother was present, was there a discussion by Dr. Seamount regarding whether or not they should remove the braces or not?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled.
Yes, they talked about removal of the braces.
And the proposal that you wrote up, did you write that proposal in the course of your duties as office manager?
Yes.
Is that something that you did on a regular basis?
Yes.
And how would you go about determining what kind of a proposal to write up for a patient?
We just had a standard pricing that we give to everyone.
So who makes the determination as to what treatment would be required?
Dr. Seamount does.
And she'd do that in consultation with the patients?
Yes.
And after that occurs, does she then turn to you and ask you to do the proposal?
Yes.
And the proposal that you did in this case, did that involve working with the existing braces or putting on new braces?
I'll object as relevance.
Sustained.
Alright, now, at the time that these people were there, did you have telephones in the office in Solvang?
Yes, we did.
And did any of the Arvizos ask to use the telephone?
No, they didn't.
Did anybody cry out for help?
No.
Did anybody indicate in any way that they were being held against their will?
No.
Did you see any evidence that anybody was holding them against their will?
No.
Did they behave in any fashion that suggested that they were not free to do as they pleased?
No.
There are some back doors. We saw some pictures. I won't put them up again, but we saw some pictures of some back doors that go out to the patio. Were those unlocked in the event that people could leave in the event of an emergency?
They're locked, but you can unlock them very easily. They don't require a key or anything.
So you turn the knob and you can go out?
Yeah.
Did anybody attempt to escape?
No.
Was there any indication that any of these people wanted to escape?
No.
Was there, during the time you saw these people, other than Joe Marcus, I think the gentleman you said that was waiting in the reception area, right?
I believe so. I was in the back office with the patients, so I wasn't aware of whether or not he possibly left to go outside or whatnot. My main concern is patients.
Alright, you saw him there at one point, 1 or 2 points in the course of things, is that right?
I saw him when they came in.
Alright.
And then I was in the back office the whole entire rest of the time.
When you saw him when they came in, you saw Joe Marcus in the presence of the Arvizo family, right?
Yes.
Did you see anything that suggested that there was any tension between Joe Marcus and the Arvizo family?
No.
Did you see anything that suggested that he was holding them against their will?
No.
Alright, now, other than Joe Marcus, did you see anybody else, Other than Dr. Seamount and the Arvizos, did you see anybody else in the office during the period of time that we're talking about?
No.
Joe Marcus. Did Joe Marcus have a camera?
No.
Was there a positive PR film crew following everybody around?
No.
Was anybody filming the removal of the
No.
orthodontic work?
No.
You're sure about that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross-examine?
Miss Haynes, good morning.
Good morning.
Who was it who called for the appointment that day?
It was Joe.
And did you know Joe Marcus prior to that day?
No.
All right. Was he the one who told you that these were high-profile patients?
No, they didn't say that they were high-profile patients. He just said that he was calling from Neverland Ranch, and needed to make an appointment for 2 guests that were at the ranch.
All right. Who was it who made the decision to make the appointment for the end of the day?
They wanted to be seen without so many patients there.
All right. So who was it who said that they wanted to be seen without patients there?
Well, Joe was the one who called to make the appointment.
Joe, was that appointment made with you or somebody else at the clinic?
It was made with the front desk lady. It wasn't made directly with me.
But your understanding was that Joe had indicated that he wanted the appointment when no other patients were there?
Yes.
I'm going to object and move to strike as no foundation and hearsay.
Sustained. Stricken.
No further questions.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. You may step down. Call your next witness.
Defense will call Miss Katie Bernerd.
When you get to the witness stand, please remain standing. Face the clerk over here and raise your right hand.
I do. Please be seated. State and spell your name for the record.
Carole McCoy, Carole, McCoy.
Thank you.
I can take her. We'll switch, Your Honor. Okay, best laid plans. Sorry about that. Miss McCoy, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
What do you do for a living at the present time?
I am a licensed esthetician and I also manage a restaurant.
And what restaurant do you manage?
Cafe Angelica.
Where is that?
In Solvang.
All right, now, you said you were licensed. And can you tell us what that license is, please?
Licensed esthetician is I do skincare, body treatments.
All right, now, you're doing pretty good, but I think the best thing is to lean into the other microphone.
Sorry.
And you got to go right up to it. Everybody's having that problem.
All right.
All right, so you do skincare?
Yes.
And have you been doing that for a long time?
Yes.
When did you get your license?
That's a good question. I've been doing it for probably about 8 years.
All right, I think maybe if you pull. The bailiff was approaching you to. Maybe pull it up just a little bit. There you go. And then just talk right into it. Where were you working February the 11th, 2003?
At my day spa.
All right, and what was the name of the spa?
Bare Skin Aromatherapy Day Spa.
Where was that located?
In Los Olivos.
Do you recall receiving a telephone call from somebody at Neverland Ranch?
Yes.
Now, do you know Mr. Jackson, who's seated here?
No.
Never met him?
No.
Have you dealt with people at Neverland Ranch?
No. Well, yes. I have a client that worked out there.
All right, so you had a client that worked there?
Uh-huh.
Have you had occasion to treat any of their guests?
No.
On February the 11th, did you receive a call from the ranch?
Yes, I did.
And what was that? What did that call pertain to?
They had a guest that wanted to come for waxing.
Did you schedule an appointment?
Yes, I did.
What time was that appointment?
It was my last appointment of the day.
All right, roughly what time of day was that?
Probably around 5 o'clock.
Okay, did you have occasion to go back through your records to verify all of this?
Yes, I did.
All right, and do you recall the client who finally showed up for this procedure?
I'm sorry?
Do you recall the person who showed up?
Yes.
Okay, and who was it?
Her name was Janet.
Alright, did you get her last name?
It was written in the book, so I didn't really refer to her last name.
And what was she there for? What services did you render to her?
She was there for waxing.
What kind of a waxing?
Do you want me to give you details about what she had done?
Yeah, in fact, let me do this. We've marked a one-page document as Exhibit 5087. Who has this witness?
Go ahead.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Miss McCoy, I'm going to show you 5087 for identification and ask you if you recognize this document.
Yes, I do. That's one of my statements.
Alright, and what does that pertain to?
The services she had done. It's listed all separately what she had done.
Alright, and those are the services for Janet, who came over from the ranch, is that correct?
Uh-huh.
Alright, I would move 5087 into evidence, Your Honor.
No objection.
It's admitted.
I'd like to put it up, if I may.
You may.
Thank you. Okay. 5087 is up on the overhead. And I think you told us that is the receipt for the work that you did, the services you performed for Janet from the ranch. Is that correct?
That's correct.
First of all, what date is that receipt dated?
February 7th.
And that's consistent with the date that you had the appointment with this particular individual, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, can you tell us, either by looking at the receipt or from memory, what precise services you performed?
She had a brow wax, a lip wax, face, leg, and bikini.
Is that pretty much a full body wax?
Uh-huh.
You have to say yes or no for.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Alright, now, do you recall talking with Janet during that period of time?
Yes, I did talk to her a little bit.
What was your policy or is your policy when you're treating people in the spa as far as chatting with them?
Object. Immaterial, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Did you have a long, chatty conversation with her?
No, I didn't.
Okay, was there any reason for that?
Object. Immaterial.
No.
Alright.
The objection is overruled. Next question.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I didn't mean to speak so quickly. Do you recall anything that Janet told you?
Object. Hearsay.
Not offered for the truth of the matter.
All right, overruled. You may answer the question.
I try to make my clients feel comfortable and I do ask them some personal questions.
What did she say? Do you recall?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. Go ahead.
I asked her, where she was from. I asked her if she had any kids.
Where did she tell you she was from?
I believe that she told me she was from South America. And that she did have children.
Did she at any time while she was there? Well, let me withdraw that. Let's establish how much time she was there. She got there about 5 o'clock, is that right?
Yes.
How long was she there?
She was there for about an hour, maybe a little more.
Okay, and at your spa? Do you still own that spa?
No, I sold it.
You sold it, so can you tell us what it looked like inside roughly? What was the physical layout for the spa?
Well, you would walk in, and there was a reception desk. And then to the left, there was 2 treatment rooms. And to the right, there was some stations for manicure patients.
Were there telephones in this office?
Yes.
And if a client, do you call them clients or?
Yes.
If a client wanted to use the telephone, did you allow people to use the phone?
Uh-huh.
You have to say yes or no for the reporter.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Did Janet at any time ask to use the telephone?
No.
Did she come by herself or was there somebody with her?
No, someone came, dropped her off.
Did that person wait around?
No, they left her, and then came back and picked her up.
Okay, was there anybody with Janet during the course of time she was there?
No.
And I know you answered this and I forgot the answer. She was there from 5 o'clock till about when?
She was there for about an hour.
So from about 5 o'clock to about 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock, aha.
During that time that she was there, was she free to leave?
Yes.
Did it appear to you that she was restrained in her liberty in any way whatsoever?
No.
Did she ask for help?
No.
Did she say anything whatsoever that suggested that she was not enjoying her visit at Neverland?
No.
Did she say anything or do anything whatsoever that suggested that she was being restrained in her liberty?
No.
Now, you said somebody dropped her off. Was it a man or a woman? Do you recall?
It was a woman.
Do you know the woman by name?
No.
And that woman, you said, dropped her off and then came back later, correct?
Correct.
So how long a period of time while Janet was there without anybody else there except you?
She was there at least an hour, a little bit more.
Okay, and during that time, did you see anybody with a camera taking pictures of any of you?
No.
Did you see a positive PR film crew come into your spa and film the hair removal from Janet's legs?
No.
Is that something that would have stuck in your mind?
No, I have a private room.
Did you see a positive PR film crew of any sort anywhere on that day in any way related to Janet?
No.
No further questions.
No questions.
All right, thank you. You may step down. Call your next witness.
Why don't I step out just to make sure? Oh, here we go. We're going to try again, Your Honor.
All right.
Defense will call Kathryn Bernerd.
When you get to the witness stand, please remain standing. Face the clerk over here and raise your right hand.
I do.
Please be seated. State and spell your name for the record.
You were right the first time. Take the other microphone.
This one? My name is Katie, or actually Kathryn Bernerd. And it's spelled Kathryn Bernerd.
Thank you.
Good morning, Miss Bernerd.
Good morning.
Miss Bernerd, which county do you live in?
I live in Napomo now. Previously then, I did before, so it would be San Luis Obispo.
Okay, and did you ever live in Santa Maria?
I did.
Okay, and when was that?
It was a year ago.
Okay, and how long had you lived in Santa Maria?
Many years.
Okay, are you familiar with a place called Neverland Valley Ranch?
Yes, I am.
How are you familiar with Neverland Valley Ranch?
I worked there.
How long did you work there?
I worked there for approximately 3.5 years.
And do you know when you worked there? What years?
It was from, I want to say, '01 to '04, I believe.
And what were your responsibilities at Neverland?
I was the administration, I worked in administration, so I was the assistant along with, I did the HR and did the events, hosted the events, different, miscellaneous. If you work at Neverland, you did pretty much everything. Everybody was able to do different jobs.
Okay, now, where was your office at Neverland?
It was in the administration building.
Okay, could you describe what the building looks like?
It was a smaller building next to the fire station.
Okay, and where at Neverland is that building?
It's up by where, the mechanic's shop, and if you knew where Neverland was, when you pulled through the gates and before you went around to the main house area and where the train depot, before you even get to that area, and you would go. If you would go up the hill, there is also a building up that way, that is where the administration building would be.
So it's up on a hill next to the fire station, correct?
Right.
Did you have an office there when you worked at Neverland?
Yes.
You said you did HR work. Do you mean human resources?
Correct.
Please explain what kind of work you did in the human resources area.
Meaning, work comp claims. Anything that dealt with all the employees, along with anything that would just come in and out of the office for Neverland. Invoicing. Pretty much anything that would deal with office work.
And how many people worked in the administration building when you were working there?
Me, and the office manager.
And who was that?
Joe.
Joe Marcus?
Correct.
Anyone else work there with you?
No.
Now, you said you worked on events at Neverland, right?
Correct.
What did you do in that regard?
I would put them together. Arrange. A lot of times I would be the contact person for the main people to call. I would then try to set the dates up with another person, see if it's available to set the event up, and then arrange for it to happen. Start everything going. You know, get the supplies, what we needed for the day. And then when the day would come, get the schedule for the day, you know, how we would get it going. And then also host it, take the groups around.
And who would tell you to plan an event, generally?
Well, me and Joe both would talk about it together.
So, but how would the idea of an event originate, if you know?
It would originate just by, well, normally events would be, every year we would do events for schools. Schools would call us. The normal, like, local schools. Or there were, Evie would call us when she would have events from the LA areas that would be coming. Would just call us, and that's how we would call, you know, and just try to get the dates available.
Now, you said local schools would call and they would want to schedule something at Neverland?
Correct.
Would this happen often?
Every year.
Okay, and what kind of events are we talking about?
They would, it just depends. If they were doing, every year, the school themselves, if they were wanting to for that class. Say that class that was graduating or something. They wanted to do one day for them, for the graduating class that did well and they wanted to bring them out. Say another school for good grades. It just would depend upon that school.
So the school would want to bring students to Neverland for an event?
Correct.
And you would help plan the event?
Correct.
And you're talking about graduation-type ceremonies?
Not ceremonies.
Parties?
Yes. A day of fun for the students.
And was there a typical time of year when you would schedule these events, or would they happen anytime during the year?
We would always schedule them at least when the days weren't rainy. They would always be sunny.
Would they typically be at the end of the school year, or did things go on during the school year as well?
During the school year.
Any other type of school events that you would get involved in yourself?
No, just the events.
Now, you said you would help plan them, right?
Uh-huh.
And you also said you hosted them?
Correct.
What would you do to plan them?
I'm going to object as immaterial, irrelevant.
Sustained.
When you hosted these events, what were your responsibilities?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You said you planned events with the groups from Los Angeles, right?
Object. Same. Irrelevant and immaterial.
We need her responsibilities, Your Honor.
Overruled. You may answer.
You said you helped plan events from Los Angeles, correct?
Nods head up and down.
And what events are you referring to?
Well, in regards to events from LA, it would be Evie contacting us, and what would happen is she would give us a list of who would be coming, so she would start that process. And pretty much from then on, we would just put the day together, as in getting the materials, the food, the supplies we needed for the day, and then making sure everybody that we needed to work for the day to be there.
And what events are you referring to? What kind of things did you plan with people from Los Angeles?
Object. Immaterial and irrelevant.
Overruled. You may answer. You may answer.
It just would depend on, let me see. Let me think of one. Say one that comes to mind, you know, because they have labels to them. A Time for Kids, was. You know, is one. That is what one event was called.
So that was a group that came?
That was a group that came.
And you would coordinate their visit?
Yes.
And would you arrange for food and things of that sort?
Correct.
Okay, and was this sort of a regular part of your work at Neverland?
One part, yes.
Okay, now, you said you had an office in the administration building, right?
Yes.
Did you do other types of work at Neverland besides what you just described?
Yes, I would help out also in the house once in a while.
And that's the main residence?
Correct.
What would you do in the main residence as part of your work?
Whenever the cleaning ladies were a little shorthanded, I would help them with housekeeping.
Okay, And what percentage of your work do you think was involved in housekeeping, where you would just help out?
Very small percentage.
And what were your hours typically when you worked at Neverland?
Always 40 hours, but I also had overtime also.
And when you worked in the main residence, who did you work with?
A lot of the times I would work with Maria, who is one of the head housekeeping cleaners.
Was that Maria Gomez?
Correct.
Who else would you work with?
Let's see. Luz. And I can't recall everybody's name right now.
Now, you mentioned you talked to Evie, right?
Correct.
Was that someone named Evie?
Evie, yes.
And she would help you plan events, is that right?
That's mainly what I would talk to Evie about, yes.
And was it your understanding that Evie was Michael Jackson's personal assistant? Right?
Yes.
So she would call you from time to time and get you going on various planning, right?
Yes.
Alright, now, if you helped out in the main residence, who would ask you to do that?
It would be Joe. If he would know they were shorthanded, he would, and I had my work done in the office, he would see if I could go down and help.
And he would simply ask you, we're shorthanded today. Would you come down and help out?
Uh-huh.
And you would just do that?
Yeah. Or sometimes the ladies would tell me, if I had time, and then I would see if it was okay.
And if you helped out in the main residence, what are the kinds of things that you would do?
Cleaning.
Okay, clean rooms?
Clean rooms. Uh-huh.
And which rooms? Do you remember?
I've cleaned guest rooms, the guest cottages. I've cleaned train depots, the main house, the theater.
Okay, and are there any other activities that you were involved in as part of your work at Neverland that you haven't described?
Mainly those.
Were you ever asked to transport people from time to time?
Yes.
Okay, please explain what you mean by that.
Also, again, whenever some people just were shorthanded and, people were busy doing other things, they would also ask me if I could run around or do other errands for whatever reasons might be. And, yes, when I was asked to give rides to certain guests, take them off property from time to time.
And who would typically ask you to do that?
It would either be Joe, the ranch manager, or sometimes it would be the person who was in charge of the house. Whoever at that time would be in charge of the house.
Counsel?
Yes, Your Honor.
Take our morning break.